been asked to speak from up here tonight because we're also doing a live stream if anybody wants to check that out later via YouTube or whatever the channels are. The purpose of tonight really is to let people get to know the sound world that this ballet is built in. So for those of you who don't know, Of Gravity and Light is a full-length ballet. Oh, can you hear me? Got to speak louder? Can you hear that? Great. I've been told my entire life to calm down and lower my voice. This is my time. This is what I've been working for. So Of Gravity and Light is a full-length, evening-length ballet, contemporary ballet that is interpreting the science of the solar system. And so I've been working on this for over a year at this point, doing research on the science of the solar system to understand and play with how I can turn those scientific concepts into a musical form and structure, both in the notes that I choose as well as the arrangement of those notes, and then thinking about what that would look like in a full-length piece, and ended up dividing it into two parts. And you'll notice from your program, part one really centers on the relationship between the Earth and the Moon. In a lot of ways, it's sort of a love story of the Earth and the Moon. And it can be thinking about two different entities. It could be a self-reflective love story. It could be also this sort of companionship or this understanding of new information and how you sort of reconcile with new information as you move through the world. It's been a pleasure working with Tom Mattingly, who is here tonight. He's the artistic director of Ballet Des Moines, and he's done some really amazing work on the choreography, creating the stage performance, as well as Yu Wen Wu, who has done a full-length, large-scale projection for the stage. And so what you're hearing tonight is only the sound world, and to get people excited and come into our premiere on April 22nd, Friday at the Civic Center stage. The idea is that there's so much to take in when you're experiencing a new work, a new musical work, a new contemporary ballet, as well as new abstract large-scale projection. So what we'll do here is hopefully ground you in the sound world so that when you come in on April 22nd, it'll feel a little bit familiar. Tonight, I also want to talk a little bit about what this piece is about and how I've sort of arranged this into two parts, 4 scenes per part. So if you read, each scene is an excerpt of scientific notation that I've collected. So scene 1 is, and the same face became tidally locked, forever pointed at the earth. And so if you close your eyes for just a moment and think about those words, that the same face became tidally locked, in essence, because the moon is rotating, is orbiting around the earth at the same rate that it's rotating, we only see one side of the moon. We only see that face, that man in the moon that we grew up with. And when you think about the same face becoming tidally locked, what are some things that you think about? What are some of the emotions that you're thinking about? Do we feel comfortable to share tonight? No? Maybe I'll just think about, like, if the same face became tidally locked, if we're talking about two different people, I began asking myself that question. Is it that you only see that one side of another human, in which case that sort of eeps into the authenticity of that relationship, or does it mean that there's this beautiful constance between two different people, that tidal lock actually creates grounding, it creates predictability, it creates this constance, which would allow us to then be able to create calendars, to make plans in our future, to think about how we want to grow our crops and when. And that's really what movement 2 is about. That the moon orbits the earth and the earth orbits the sun, everything is moving. And because of that, and because everything becomes predictable, the shadow that goes over the moon creates those lunar phases. And the 8 lunar phases, I thought I was going to create something that was just really very ethereal and magic and weighted out into the universe, and it would just be this lovely, eerie piece, which I've done some of that. But for movement 2, I really focused on this fact that ancient civilizations have actually created those calendars and that structure because of the lunar phases. And it became this sort of universal experience in ancient cultures across the globe. It became this unifying piece. So instead, you'll hear a lot of repeated notes that go throughout the ensemble. It starts in the strings, then moves into the horn. The clarinet has it at one point, and then at the very end, we get some of the singers coming through. So what I was playing with as a composer was thinking about how can I create gravity and how can I create orbits and rotation. And so I loved this idea of repeated notes that were getting just a little bit louder and then a little bit softer, thinking about how our experience with an orbit or a rotation could be, that it can be sort of soft, and then as it becomes closer, a little bit louder. Thinking now about the entire ensemble, that concept is sort of migrates through the whole ensemble. And then getting into movement 3 and 4, the fact that because the moon's gravity affects the entire Earth, literally pulling at every inch of the Earth. And so we see that most with the ocean tides, and you'll hear, hopefully, oceans in movement 3. It's a full choir piece. It features baritone, horn, and viola as well. So this idea that we'll get this tense, anxious, but hopefully invigorating, swirling energy as that energy then, and that force that is awakened in the earth due to the moon's pull on the earth, actually creates a force that then gets transferred back to the moon and is slowly pushing the moon away from the earth. So that whole energy that's coming from, that we're seeing in the ocean tides, is created by the moon, and it becomes this force that is so great that it's slowly pushing that same moon away 4 centimeters every year. And so then it bleeds right into movement 4, which is, and scientists refer to this as the Lunar Retreat. And so, just as an example, all 4 of those movements, it is about the science. I'm using the science to create the structure and to create these ideas, but it's also metaphorically, what does that mean? So then again, for number 4, if you think about this slow, silent drift, and at first I thought, oh, well, this is a really unhealthy relationship. And they're just like slowly moving away. And then I realized after I had begun that movement that it really was about death. It was about grief. It was about this slow letting go as the gravity starts to shift in our own bodies, and thinking about this sort of how can we think about energy as it's sort of slowly drifting away. It's a very peaceful movement. And then part 2, then the sun enters, and we get a sense that the sun is the anchor of our solar system, that everything revolves around the sun. And then what I did with that, instead of doing sort of a linear, almost story arc, part 2, I'm thinking about how can we sort of dissect in vignettes what this energy of the sun is. And so the first one, the bending of light caused by gravity, that's really where I found the title of this piece, Of Gravity and Light, because I was really excited about that relationship between gravity and light. I also, at that point, started thinking, well, our entire perceptions and our experiences are shaped by gravity and light. It's the gravity that weights us down. It's the gravity that allows us to stand upright, and it's the gravity that helps us to lift others. But it's also light that creates life on our planet. It's also light that helps us understand and navigate the world around us with warmth and but also metaphorically, what does that light mean? And then from 6, 7, and 8, playing with this idea, temporarily obscured by passing into the shadow of another body, really exploring eclipse, solar eclipse. And you'll hear a solar eclipse in our string trio. Right after that solar eclipse, there's almost like a coda or resolution where you are building towards this eclipse. And you'll hear it in Julie Fox Henson. Everything is growing and growing as the anticipation, our emotional anticipation of about ready to witness this eclipse happens, and she cuts through, and then there's this silence. Because when a solar eclipse happens, everything around it becomes silent. The birds are silent, the animals are silent, the wind stops, and everyone's in awe for that moment. And then
there's a resolution where we have this opportunity to almost share in that experience. You hear a lot of unison between the string players. And it's this sort of, that shared experience that we all know of anticipation and witnessing something that makes us feel so singular and so small, and yet so very connected to everyone else on the planet, because we've all had this experience. And then Movement 7 doesn't happen, because Movement 7 is a sound piece that you'll hear only for the staged version. It's not played by live musicians. And Movement 8, everything bound to it by gravity, is about the sun, as well as investigating all of the musical motifs that I've created in movements 1 through 7, now layered on top of each other, essentially creating a universe out of all of these different separable parts. So I think that's all I'm going to talk to you tonight. But there will be a Q&A at the end, and I would just invite you to, at different times, just close your eyes and imagine what these titles mean as it relates to the music as well. Before I sit down, I'd be remiss not to thank everyone who has dedicated so much time and energy and grace to this entire project. Tim McMillin has done an excellent job. I tell him probably 3 times every time I see him how grateful I am that he is conducting this ensemble, and then the Des Moines Vocal Arts Ensemble is his choir that he leads. So that's been a real gift to partner with everyone who's on the stage tonight. And with that, I'll welcome you to the stage. Thank you, Tim. Thank you.